Well, everybody, who would have thought that people don't like skyrocketing prices, that people don't want to spend exponentially more for games than they did in the past? Uh, who would have thought people just don't want to pay 80, $90 for a base level game? And unfortunately, that's where things are heading with how much prices have been going up. And Bellular thinks the same thing. Let's see what he has to talk about with the publishers were wrong, right? Because honestly, I don't know about you, but I have been spending more time looking at either free to play games where you can just download it, play, and then if you want to spend money on it, or cheaper games, indie games, the $10, $20 games. If it's above $20, I usually take my sweet time before I even think about buying it, because honestly, people have been really lacking in the care, the love that they put into games. Like people are just trying to put out slop, especially with people implementing more and more AI in the not so good ways. It's just it really ruins the trust that people have for game developers, for game publishers. And let's see what he has to say, and let's see what's going on here, because the prices are going up and it's not looking good for anybody who's trying to just, stranglehold us into buying more and more expensive games while they're not really giving us anything better in return.
Seems the rest of the industry is also beginning to hear you. Now, this year started with the fear that gaming is getting more expensive. Microsoft and Nintendo pushed the ceiling to $80.
And let's be real, Mario Kart, of all things, I don't feel like is $80. I feel like it's a good game, but I feel like their big push was the fact that it was really the only game on release that you could buy. So if you were getting the Switch 2, it was really your only option unless you wanted to play older games in higher quality. Which, I mean, if you're going to play the new console, you might as well play the new stuff. Right?
An impossibly high ask, especially as everything else has got more and more pricey. But elsewhere in the industry, something quieter is happening. And it's this. The games that you are actually buying, well, we've got the data about them. And as it turns out, they're getting cheaper. $100 for Grand Theft Auto 6. That was the rumor that kicked.
And okay, so $100 for Grand Theft Auto, I feel like is in a kind of like own realm, right? After everything, I feel like it's not going to be as wanted, as expected as it was back then, because now with this new delay, I don't feel like it's going to have as big as a splash. And if it is as expensive as that, $90, $100 for the game, at a base level, I definitely don't feel like it's going to go any good. But I definitely agree with the fact that people are buying cheaper games because it feels like they put more love into it. Like a good game I bought recently, Ball Pit. It's not a super expensive game. It's not made by a AAA developer, but it is amazing, and I recommend it to anyone who likes that kind of style pinball-esque Galaga game. It is fantastic, and I recommend it to everybody. And I think it was worth every penny. I probably would have paid double for it if I had the option to. But it is a great game, and I love it.
Off this year's anxiety about game prices. It was one that Take-Two have been happy to downplay, if not outright refute. But with GTA now delayed, we won't know the truth until next autumn, though we've already seen audiences reject the new price ceiling of $80.
Oh,
Xbox tried to put The Outer Worlds 2 at $80, presumably buying some headroom for Microsoft's lovely 30% profit margin demand, but they quickly reversed that decision. The inference from that? They didn't see enough pre-orders. People essentially...
Yeah, not even just with the price increase, but pre-orders are just a waste of time nowadays. With how many times we as a community have been deceived by developers, by publishers, about how good a game is, or this, that, and the other. It's going to be a full game on release. It's not going to have any bugs. And then we get the game, they barely work. It's not at all the feeling, the experience that they promised. And it's just a waste of time, because also the pre-order stuff isn't really anything great anyway. And with the microtransactions being something that's more and more common nowadays, they'll give you that if you really want it in like a $5 bundle or something later on. I've seen it happen plenty of times. But pre-orders aren't really anything. If you're smart with your money and you are smart with how you pick out your games, you're going to be interested in the game, bookmark it, wait for it to come out, see how it actually plays by somebody else, by a streamer, YouTuber, someone who reviews games, has first-hand experience with it, and then wisely spend your money on it, because it's just not worth it. We've been blindsided too many times by people promising so much and delivering nothing in return.
Voted with their wallet. Just that, unlike real votes, the great thing about voting with your wallet is you don't need to do anything to cast your vote. It turns out audiences just wouldn't pay that price for the Outer Worlds 2. But you know what they would pay? The regular price. Because, selling at a normal price, the game did have a top 10 launch. Though, the right product at $80 will sell. Mario Kart World kind of proved that. Even bundled with Switch 2 for many buyers, you don't get a 92% attach rate across 9.57 million copies.
But like I said, that has to do with it being really the only game that came out with the Switch 2. So people were kind of funneled into only getting this one type of game. Otherwise, if you weren't into this game, you didn't really buy the Switch 2. So it's kind of how the numbers matched up like that.
Without lots of people shelling out the full amount. But that's only one side of this story, because the reality we need to dive into today is about how off-console prices have been plummeting. But there's a not so funny thing hanging over all of this, and it's the simple fact that video game spending is actually falling, but subscriptions are rising. We've seen that in analyst reports, and too often, well, we're paying for subs we don't use. That's why Rocket Money...
You know, I can see how that works too. Subscription-based services, it has less of a lower bar of entry, while still getting everything you want. Like the Xbox Game Pass isn't probably the best one because of the recent price increase, but that was great. It's a low bar of entry. You just pay a monthly basis. You don't have to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on games. Just buy the Game Pass. Anything on the Game Pass you basically get for free for as long as you have the subscription. It is a great thing. Now, if you're super into it, and that's your main way of playing games, then the price increase still is kind of okay, but it's definitely not as good as it was before.
Is today's video sponsor, because they make it easy at Rockfire to make. They will be able to renegotiate. I was overloaded with paperwork, and I actually did that negotiation late, and by doing it late, I paid premium, and that's rocketmoney.com.
Good job.
Valuer news. If you've bought a game on Steam in the last 18 months, you probably paid $20 or less. In fact, you've probably been paying less since 2023 than you did from 2020. Now, what are these numbers? Well, these numbers are from the research of Simon...
You know, it also pays being in the community I am, you know, the gacha games and everything like that. They're usually free, and unless you really want to get every character in the game, you rarely have to spend anything on it unless you're a super sweat. So I'm loving it. I'm in a pretty good position. I spend money on cheap games that I feel like will be entertaining in the meantime while I'm in the dry periods of the gacha games I play.
Carlos, who runs the excellent Game Discover Co. newsletter. He tracked average and median prices for the top 50 new monthly games on Steam during that period of time, ranked by copy sold, and you're looking at the graphs now. We see a median price as low as $10, as high as $20, with averages between $16 and $29. Shocker, Steam users are thrifty people who like deals. We probably didn't need this.
Yeah, when they put out deals every couple months of this game was once $60, now you can get it for a 3/4 of a penny. Yeah, of course we're gonna wait for those deals. It's the only thing you want to do.
this much analysis to work that out, but that's not where I'm ending. Here's where things get truly interesting. From February 2023 to October 2025, the average amount of money spent on a best-selling game went down by 2%. The median, though, it went down by 20%. That means that more games are selling at a lower price. And whenever Carlos took a look at the revenue earned, the trend actually held. Now, in theory, that should favor more expensive games. They generate more revenue per sale. But even there, the median dropped from $23.75 to $20.35. That's about 14% of a drop. And do bear in mind that as this has been happening, the currency has been inflating. So, even as players feel like they are being pressured towards $80 games, what they're actually buying is getting cheaper and cheaper. And what's key is that this...
And you know, the pricing for the $80 games, obviously, not so much for PC, because like he said, PC has a bunch of deals. The main platform on PC is Steam. They give thing deals every day of the week. It's mainly consoles, and I feel like the biggest offender is probably Nintendo, just because they don't even lower their prices of old games. So they're not lowering the price of old games, but they're also raising the price of new games. It's just getting more and more expensive to like old Nintendo games. Those people are gonna have to shell out just to play the new Pokemon or Mario Kart when the next one comes out, that's for sure.
This is not showing us what has been offered to players, it's showing us what players have actually chosen. It's showing the best-selling premium games on the platform, and that does feel like a bit.
Yeah, look at this. Mega Bonk. Fantastic game. 3 million copies sold. Is a $10 game. Hollow Knight. People have been waiting for that forever. Of course they sold a bunch. No, I'm Not Human. That game is crazy. I've seen bits and pieces of that. It is a crazy, crazy, crazy looking game. But these are just, you know, a couple of the games. And the ones I'm pointing out aren't even the big contenders. Borderlands lost me a while ago. I love their games, but I just can't do it anymore. They just don't feel like it has the same vibe. But $70 games, and they're not selling quite nearly as many. But, you know, they got to keep up. They definitely got to keep up if these big games, these big publishers, big developers are getting outclassed by $10, $20 games.
Bit of a win, right? That we are seeing smaller teams with cheaper games beginning to dominate the sales space. That says a lot for the value of Steam, and in a world where people would have to compare the price of a full console plus a subscription for multiplayer and more expensive games, and weigh that up to a Steam machine with generally far cheaper games, well, I think it also makes the Steam machine look stronger as well. Overall, though, it's somewhat validating an argument you see all the time, right? The argument people make every time someone suggests...
I still feel like the Steam machine, the GameCube, if you will, I feel like it's going to be maybe 1,500, maybe 2K, depending on how, you know, components keep going and everything like that. But I'm feeling that's the ballpark of what it's going to be.
That's an $80 price point, which is that you make your profit in aggregate. So make your games cheaper, and then more people will buy them. Buying 4 $20 indie games is to many people better than one $80 AAA game. Surely that's what's going on. Surely that's what everyone is doing. Well, surely. Carlos gave us the perfect example. It's the September releases on Steam, where Silksong sold like gangbusters at $20, with 4.6 million copies shifted on Steam alone. That's nearly double the...
Well, I don't feel like the price of Silksong even mattered, because after Hollow Knight, they got such a deep, devoted player base that game could have been $70. And they would have been perfectly fine with that. They probably still would have sold the same amount of copies at $70, because people have been waiting. People saw what they can do in Hollow Knight, and were just anticipating, waiting, just, you know, fantasizing what they could do in Silksong. And once they saw what they could do, once they saw some previews of Silksong and everything like that, they were sold on the spot. You could have said, oh, this game's $100 just because we put so much work into it. We had to raise the price a little bit. They'd be like, all right, fine, take my money. Do you want a tip? I don't feel like the price point of Silk Song really mattered in that case, just because it's a good game. It had a good predecessor. It's a good game itself. So they built trust with their community to be able to do what they want to do with the price point.
Sales of a full-price title like Borderlands 4. The immediate takeaway is a lower barrier to entry at the price of a couple of coffees, meaning you give yourself the widest possible audience and a big game.
Absolutely.
And in theory,
you want more people in so you can hook them and want to be able to play the game. You don't want to set the bar of entry too high because it turns people away. That's why so many people play, free games, free-to-play games, like Marvel Rivals. They get in, they like the game, then they buy the skins, they do this, they do that, they throw money where they want to do it, but you got to get them in, you got to get them interested first before you can just start charging these astronomical amounts of money for something that's just pixels that doesn't really mean anything to people on a basis.
that also means that more people can buy more games. But it's actually not quite that simple. You see, regardless of price, the majority of game players don't actually buy that many games. Circana's Future of Games report surveyed 2,500 US players on self-reported purchase patterns. About a third of the market.
That makes sense, because a lot of games nowadays are built for, continuous play. Either log in every day, online service, do what you got to do, or they have these massive replayable campaigns that the first campaign takes 40 hours, but then you have 27 endings, and each ending you can do different kinds of things and make different choices. Everybody wants their game to be the one that's played the most, of course. So with everything having so much replayability, either on a multiplayer online basis or just it's a huge game like Baldur's Gate, for example. It's a huge game with massive replayability. People are going to have less and less time to actually play more games unless your whole job is to play games. But on the average person, they're only going to be able to play a handful of games a year. If they really like the game, they're really dedicated, because they don't have that much time to beat it in the first place, let alone do all these different endings. Someone with a full-time job and a family might maybe beat Baldur's Gate once and then be like, well, now I want to play this other class. So him trying to beat that game with twice within a year might be the entire year. So yeah, it definitely makes more and more sense that people are having less time to play these games, so people aren't going to want to buy as many if you can't play them.
As they buy just one game or fewer a year. Just under 2/3, 63%, buy fewer than 2 games a year. That is absolutely insane to me, but I suppose when I think about what my norms are, or maybe you do the same, we probably have a sampling bias.
Exactly. When it's kind of a shock for content creators, the bigger ones that do this for a full-time living. They're like, what do you mean you haven't bought A, B, and C? They're great games. Well, why would I buy A, B, and C when I can only play A? I only have enough time for A. Maybe in 3 months when I have enough, when I beat A, I can go on to B. But I can't buy A, B, and C that launch all in the same month.
That is, in and around enthusiast gamers. We do buy more games, but it seems that with broader audiences, that is less the case. Now obviously, that's Circana doing a survey of 2,500 people in the US. It's good enough work, it's hypothesis generating work, but obviously, it is just a survey. Though I would say that when you think about games, overall,
take all that with a grain of
lot
salt.
of it is plausible. You see, a lot of people are only interested in buying this year's sport game, or this year's Call of Duty. Well, maybe not this year's Call of Duty. Maybe they bought Battlefield instead. But the majority of any product-based industry is often people who are gently engaged in it. Not people, perhaps, like you and me. But it's actually the top of the chart that complicates things here, because those people probably aren't the ones buying indie games for $20 en masse. No, that's the other 37% of people, but even that 37% is quite stratified. 22% say they buy a game every 3 months. That's 4 games a year, and that adds up with Valve's own data. Yes, Valve's own data suggests that users play only 4 games on Steam on average in 2023 and 2024. A further 10% buy a new game monthly. which is of course great for an industry releasing thousands of games a year. But we need to put this in perspective. If you bought Silksong and any other game in September, 2 games in 1 month, then you are only 4% of the games market. That's kind of wild. And even if we're allowed to some swing and fuzziness because a survey...
I mean, again, like I said, that makes sense. Unless you're buying it just to buy it for now and play it later, most people aren't playing multiple games at the same time like that. Especially things like Silksong, things like Mega Bonk. Mega Bonk is just, just play over and over again. It's something to waste your time. There's not a real end per se. It's just kind of a good time wasting game. As of Silksong, I don't know the exact amount of hours it takes to beat the game, but definitely a good amount with how long people have been waiting for the game. So yeah, being that top 4%, good to you guys, But you're getting up there. You're not like everybody else.
Is only as good as the survey. The point, I think, still does stand. And of course, it's a point that we do see in a lot of other things as well. Take whaling, right? Whaling and free-to-play games, where the majority of the revenue does come from a very small strata of that game's player base.
That is true.
And when we see data like that, I think we begin to understand.
Amen to the whales that keep the gacha games alive. Amen.
Why all of those publishers and indie devs moved their releases away from Silksong, or of course, away from GTA 6. And in the case of the indies, it would especially be because most of those indies are at the same price point or cheaper than Silksong. So if you're releasing against Silksong, a game with massive cut-through to enthusiast audiences, if you're releasing against that, then, well, you're betting on the 4% of the market turning up that does actually
that is
buy
crazy to think about.
That doesn't really seem like a great strategy, does it? And here's...
Most people are losing that gamble.
What if I told you there's another layer? You see, this chart does not distinguish between new games and already released games that are on sale. Every time someone buys a game that's been out for 6 months, they're probably not buying a new game that month to go along with it, regardless of price. So, more people aren't buying games, even as prices keep trending down. Now, if that is the case, as a bunch of this data suggests, well, why then are audiences feeling like they are constantly being asked for more and more? When people are asked to pay $80 or $70 for a video game, Nintendo, Microsoft, or Sony are basically banking on a fairly simple principle, that the people who actually have money will spend it regardless of anything else that's going on. Essentially, they're betting on it being a premium product with inflexible demand. That is why marketing teams target those people. That's why those absurd collector's editions exist, right? The people who...
I've gotten probably one collector's edition game. And it was for Soul Calibur 5, I believe. I loved it. It was great. But, at the end of it, I feel like it was worth it at all. I got a cheaply made little figurine. I got a case for the game because that was when I was still buying like hard CDs for the games on my Xbox. Got a case for it that looked like a book. It was nice. It was neat. It was novel. But man, if I could have saved that like 30 extra bucks I spent on that, I probably would have. It just really, it doesn't benefit you at all. And maybe if it gave me a better kind of statue or something, but the little figurine got like lost in a week because it was tiny, it was super small, it wasn't even that great. It just collector's editions I feel like are a waste of time. Unless you're just trying to like flex on people.
Absolutely love games and have money. They're the people these companies can count on. The games industry basically thrives in people who can spend without thinking about it, which has always been the case. Buying more than one $60 game at launch has been unaffordable to people for years.
Yeah, I mean, people have always banked on, people doing, the businesses have already banked on people doing things that are just going out of their means to buy expensive games. But the games then, compared to the games now, feel like they put more time in it. They put more love, more care. They carefully crafted the games to make people want them. Now it just feels like every other game that comes out is just kind of slop. Especially the AAA games. It doesn't feel like they care whatsoever I mean, just think about the Call of Duty thing with the whole AI debacle, where they're throwing AI art into every little thing and just makes it look like crap. Like they didn't even try to do anything. They're just like, well, we have a big name. Let's just, save some money, just throw some random AI stuff into it. They'll eat it up like slop. It's just not the same as it was back then.
Years. But the problem is
then that's not even talking about like economy issues and inflation.
Portion of people with money to spend freely actually does appear to be shrinking. Get this. As of September, the top 10% of earners accounted for 50% of US retail sales. And the very same year, spending in games is actually down. The 18 to 25 age group in the US is spending nearly a quarter less in games this year. And everyone, just in large, is down a couple of percent. But on the whole, most game spending is only a few points down. Now, given we're in rough economic times, that could seem like a good thing, right? Oh, the world is experiencing troubles, but games are only down in most categories by a few percent. What if I told you it's actually worse than that? You see, the difference that's being made up, right? What's made this only a few points down? Well, it's basically subscriptions making up the difference, because those have grown all year. But that comes from the bottom of the spending population, not the top, right? It comes from people who are seeking more and more value for their increasingly limited dollars, whilst also spending less and less on premium games. And I think that is the big tension that people are feeling. We're in a situation where game marketing...
I'm personally all for subscription services for games. Like Game Pass, I feel like is a fantastic idea. Feel a little overpriced. Maybe if they started out with that pricing, I wouldn't feel that way. But just because they upped it, I feel some type of way about it. But I feel like if they keep doing something like that and they keep subscription things going, I feel like that is a good idea. It lowers the bar, makes everything more accessible. And, if they have these games that they like, they want to keep on playing, but they don't want the subscription services, it opens up that those games have already been played, tested, yada, 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 and now they want to buy it for real this time. I feel like subscription services for games is a great idea. Yeah, honestly, there's nothing bad to say about it. If you like a game, buy it for real. Now, the only time I would say the subscription services are bad is if you can only play that game through a subscription service. I've never been a fan of things like that, like World of Warcraft. You only get that subscription service, and then that's it. But, I understand economic issues, money issues. You gotta have the continuous money to make a game continuously work. I get it.
Traditional big games are basically out of reach to most of the audience, more so than perhaps ever in recent memory. But the companies haven't changed how they talk to players as a whole. A lot of the market has changed underneath those companies, but it's not really like it seems they've really changed their comms to match. And that is leading to people feeling ignored. It's leading to people facing demands that they cannot meet. And that's because the companies that used to be targeting them are now not targeting them. They are targeting someone with more disposable income. And that's a tough change to stomach. But by contrast, the $20 games on Steam are changing.
I mean, it's tough to stomach, but it's just how it is. I'm not going to try and market and sell something to somebody who can't buy it. It's just the fact of life. And, I can't really fault them. They're here to keep a business going. They're here to make money. But it's just how it is. I'm a salesman in my day job. I'm not going to try and sell something to somebody who is just getting by, who can't afford it. I'm going to try and sell it to somebody who has expendable income, who it just doesn't care like that. It's just how things work in the real world.
Individual indie developers are watching game prices creep lower and lower, and they're just hoping that they will get enough sales to succeed, because they cannot afford to price higher and risk player blowback. Now, we're not quite at the mobile game space, where developers basically can't afford to price games as premium products anymore, but we are seeing a shift in how games are sold.
I think more people need to do either cheap games that you play one time through, or free-to-play games where you have microtransaction cosmetics only. I'm not talking about cosmetics to make you progress in the game, only or microtransactions to progress in the game, just cosmetics. Because I feel like you could throw hundreds of microtransactions at me, but as long as it's just to make my character look a little different, I do not care. Maybe I'll get one, maybe I won't. But if you try and throw things at me to make me progress in the game, and I can only speed this thing up by spending $5 on X, Y, and Z, I automatically hate that game, personally. But I feel like that's the kind of models that we're looking at, that we're going towards the future. Free-to-play cosmetic microtransactions, or $30 and below easy to play or single play games. The times of things being $60, $80 isn't going to last for long, or much longer from now.
And what that may lead to may not be great for all of us. Because if you can't ask players for more than $25 without facing comparisons to Silksong, then you may start having to scope your development very differently indeed. And that means that some traditional games simply would be out of reach. It could also mean that we do feel more and more nickel and dimed. So, it's not all doom and gloom. It actually seems there's a lot of vibrancy in the indie scene. But what we are seeing is a changing market, changing behaviors, and a AAA sector that is struggling to keep up pace with that change. So no wonder they're out of touch. And speaking of out of touch...
Yeah, you know...
Bungie. That's certainly something a lot of people would say about them, and they have just had some not-so-rosy news. Basically, a big write-off at the same time that they...
Yeah, I mean, everything he says is great. That's correct, honestly. Like I said, there's only really two road paths going down now. I mean, just the fact that people are asking, like, Borderlands 4. People are asking $70 for Borderlands 4 when, in reality, I don't think it even measures up to Silksong even in the slightest. And when you put it in that way, 70 to $20, there's not even a second thought in that matter. But, you know, let me know what you guys think down below. Let me know if you want some more React content. I'm going to start doing it again. I kind of slowed down, had a lot of things going on, but I am going to put out some more videos, and I hope you guys like it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down and below for more Reacts and game news. Hope you guys have a good one. Peace.